The night started with laughter. The kind of carefree noise that fills a room when you're surrounded by people you think you can trust. Jenna and I had been invited to a house party by our mutual friend, Chris. It wasn't really my scene. Too many people I didn't know and an open bar that practically begged for trouble. But Jenna insisted. "It'll be fun," she said, squeezing my arm. "You need to loosen up." I stood near the kitchen, sipping a watered-down whiskey, while Jenna worked the room like a politician on the campaign trail. She had a way of drawing attention, her laugh echoing above the hum of conversation, her gestures grand and captivating. She'd always been the social butterfly to my grounded introvert, but tonight, something about her felt off. It started when I saw her with him. I didn't know the guy, but I recognized his type instantly. He was tall, with a cocky grin that made you want to punch him. His shirt was unbuttoned just enough to show off the gold chain resting against his chest, and the way he leaned in close when Jenna spoke set every nerve in my body on fire. She didn't pull away. I clenched my jaw, willing myself to stay calm. She's just being friendly, I told myself. This is Jenna. But then it happened, a look passed between them. It was subtle, quick enough that most people wouldn't have noticed. But I did. It wasn't a look you gave a coworker or a casual acquaintance. It was the kind of look that carried unspoken promises. "Everything okay?" Chris's voice startled me. He handed me another drink, his expression a mix of curiosity and concern. "Yeah," I lied, my eyes still fixed on Jenna and her new shadow. For the next hour, I tried to shake it off. I mingled, laughed when it was expected, and even joined a round of shots with Chris and his girlfriend. But every time I glanced across the room, there they were, Jenna and Gold Chain, huddled in corners, their heads tilted toward each other like they shared some private world I wasn't invited into. Then came the tipping point. It was nearly midnight, and the party was at its peak. I just returned from the bathroom when I saw Jenna slip out the back door with him. No explanation, no glance over her shoulder. Just gone. My stomach dropped, and every rational thought I had evaporated. I pushed my way through the crowd, barely registering the faces or the laughter that surrounded me. The cool night air hit me like a slap as I stepped outside. They were there, just a few feet away, standing too close under the dim glow of the porch light. I froze, my mind racing. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and she didn't stop him. I should have walked away. I should have gone back inside and confronted her later when we were alone. But the anger, the betrayal was too much. "What the hell is this?" I said, my voice louder than I intended. They jumped apart like teenagers caught sneaking a cigarette. Jenna's eyes went wide, her lips parting as if she couldn't decide what to say. "Babe, it's not what it looks like," she started, her voice trembling just enough to make it sound convincing. But I wasn't buying it. "Not this time." "Not what it looks like?" I repeated, my voice cold, echoing in the stillness of the backyard. "Then why don't you tell me exactly what it is?" Jenna's hands fluttered to her sides, a nervous habit I'd seen before when she was caught in a lie. She glanced at Gold Chain, who stood frozen, his smug confidence replaced with wide-eyed panic. "Relax, man," he interjected, raising his hands as if surrendering. "We were just talking. Chill out." "Talking?" I snapped, stepping closer. My voice dropped, low and dangerous. "Then why sneak out here like thieves in the night? What's so secret it can't be said in front of everyone else?" Jenna reached for me, her touch feeling foreign, like a stranger's. "Ethan, stop. You're making a scene." I pulled my arm away, disgusted by her casual dismissal of my anger. "You're damn right I'm making a scene. Because this," I gestured between her and Gold Chain, "isn't normal." Her face twisted into something defensive, like I was the villain here. "I can't believe you're acting like this," she hissed, her voice sharp enough to cut. "I stepped out to get some air, and Jeremy," she nodded toward Gold Chain, "was just keeping me company. Is that a crime now?" Jeremy. The name made my skin crawl. I turned my attention to him, my fists clenching at my sides. "If it's so innocent, Jeremy, why don't you tell me what you were talking about?" He blinked, clearly unprepared for the question. Work stuff?" he mumbled, avoiding eye contact. "Work stuff?" I repeated, my tone dripping with sarcasm. That's funny because Jenna doesn't even like talking about work at home. Why would she suddenly spill her guts to some guy she barely knows at a party? Jeremy opened his mouth, but no words came out. His eyes darted to Jenna like he was waiting for backup. And then Jenna snapped. "You know what, Ethan? I'm done with this," she said, her voice rising. Her eyes burned with fury as she crossed her arms over her chest. "You've been hovering all night, watching me like some jealous psycho. I can't even have a conversation without you jumping to conclusions. It's exhausting." The audacity of her words left me momentarily speechless. Hovering? Psycho? She was flipping the script, trying to turn this into my fault. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. "Don't do that," I said quietly. "Don't make this about me when you're the one acting suspicious." "Suspicious?" she repeated, laughing bitterly. "I'm at a party, Ethan. I'm talking to people. Maybe if you weren't so busy sulking in the corner, you'd see that." Her words hit like a slap, but behind her anger, I caught something else. A flicker of fear. She was deflecting because she knew she was caught. "Let's go," I said, my voice firm. "We're leaving." "I'm not going anywhere," she shot back, her chin jutting out defiantly. For a moment, it felt like the world stopped. We stood there, locked in a silent standoff, while Jeremy hovered awkwardly, clearly regretting every choice that had led him to this moment. "Fine," I said finally, my voice icy. "Stay here with him, but don't bother coming home tonight." Jenna's eyes widened, and for the first time, her mask cracked. She opened her mouth to argue, but I didn't wait to hear what she had to say. I turned and walked away, each step fueled by the white-hot rage burning in my chest. Inside, Chris saw me and called out, but I barely registered his voice. I grabbed my coat, shoved the front door open, and stepped into the night, my mind racing. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The walk to my car felt surreal, my feet moving automatically while my mind reeled. Every word Jenna had said echoed in my head like a haunting refrain. "You're making a scene. You're a jealous psycho. I'm done with this." I gripped the steering wheel as I sat in the driver's seat, my knuckles turning white. I didn't start the car right away. Instead, I stared out the windshield at the row of houses lining the quiet street. Inside one of those houses, my wife, the woman I had trusted with everything, was still with him. I should have driven away, but something in me snapped. I needed answers, the truth she wasn't willing to give me. I got out of the car and walked back toward the house, keeping to the shadows. The sound of muffled laughter and music spilled out from the windows, but I ignored it. I circled to the backyard, my heart pounding in my chest like a war drum. There they were. Jenna and Jeremy were standing near the side gate, away from the main party. They were talking in hushed tones, their body language screaming intimacy. Jenna's hand rested lightly on his arm, and he was leaning in just a little too close. I ducked behind a hedge, watching them like a hunter stalking prey. My ears strained to catch their words. "He's always like this," Jenna was saying, her voice filled with exasperation. "So controlling. It's suffocating." Jeremy chuckled, low and smug. "You don't deserve that. You deserve someone who appreciates you. Someone who knows how to have a good time." Her laugh was soft, almost shy. "Maybe." The blood in my veins turned to ice. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She wasn't just deflecting or covering her tracks anymore. She was outright betraying me, painting me as some kind of monster while she flirted with this walking cliché of bad decisions. I stepped out from behind the hedge, my presence sudden and undeniable. "Appreciates her?" I said, my voice cutting through the night like a knife. "You mean like the husband who's been breaking his back to give her everything she's ever wanted?" They froze, their faces draining of color. Jenna's hand shot back to her side as if she'd been caught stealing. Jeremy's smug grin vanished, replaced with an awkward grimace. "Ethan," Jenna started, but I held up a hand to stop her. "No," I said sharply. "You don't get to talk right now." My eyes locked on Jeremy. "And you? What the hell do you think you're doing with my wife?" Jeremy raised his hands, his voice shaky. "Man, look, I didn't know she was married, okay? She didn't tell me." "Oh, don't you dare," I snarled. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You've been following her around all night like a lost dog." Jenna stepped in, her voice desperate. "Ethan, Please, this isn't what it looks like. I turned to her, my anger boiling over. Stop lying, Jenna. I heard you. Controlling? Suffocating? That's what you think of me. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. For the first time, she seemed genuinely lost for words. Ethan, I didn't mean it like that, she finally stammered. I was just venting. You've been so tense lately, and I needed someone to talk to. To him. I gestured at Jeremy, who was inching toward the gate like a coward. You couldn't talk to me, your husband, but you could confide in some random guy at a party? It's not like that, she insisted, her voice rising. You're twisting everything. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. Twisting everything? Jenna, you were 2 seconds away from falling into his lap, and you want me to believe this is innocent. Jeremy seized the opportunity to bolt, mumbling something about needing to go. The gate creaked as he slipped away into the night, leaving me and Jenna alone. Good. I took a step closer to her, my voice low and steady. You need to tell me the truth right now. No more excuses, no more lies. What's going on between you two? Her eyes filled with tears. Fake ones, I was sure of it. Ethan, I swear, it's nothing. I've been feeling distant, and he was there. Distant, I repeated, my voice cold. And instead of coming to me, you decided to fix things with some stranger? Are you even listening to yourself? She reached for me, but I stepped back, the distance between us feeling like miles. My chest heaved as I fought to keep my emotions in check. I'm done talking here, I said finally. We'll finish this at home, if you even have the guts to come back tonight. Her face crumpled, and for a moment, I thought she might argue. But she just stood there, silent and defeated. As I walked away, I got home first. The silence of the house was deafening, the kind that presses against your skull and amplifies the roar of your thoughts. I sat on the couch, staring at the blank TV screen, gripping my phone so tightly I thought it might crack. I didn't call her. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of thinking I was desperate or weak. If she wanted to play games, she could play them alone. The minutes stretched into hours. Midnight came and went, and still no sign of her. My mind churned with scenarios. Some logical, some dark, all of them cutting deeper into the trust I'd thought was unshakable. At 2 a.m., the front door creaked open. I didn't bother to turn my head. The sound of her heels clicking against the hardwood floor was enough to send a fresh wave of anger coursing through me. You actually came home, I said, my voice flat. She froze in the doorway, her silhouette illuminated by the faint glow of the street lamp outside. For a moment, she didn't say anything, just stood there with her purse dangling from her hand like she was trying to decide if she should run back out. I didn't think you'd still be up, she said finally, her tone cautious. I laughed, a cold, hollow sound. Oh, I'm sorry. Was I supposed to sleep peacefully while my wife was off God knows where with God knows who? She sighed, closing the door and setting her purse on the table. Ethan, I don't want to fight. Too bad, I snapped, standing up, because I'm not letting this go until you tell me the truth. Her eyes darted away, her hands fidgeting with the strap of her dress. I told you at the party, it's not what you think. Jeremy was just, don't you dare say he was a friend. I interrupted, my voice rising. Friends don't touch each other like that. They don't sneak off into the night and whisper about how suffocating their spouses are. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I could see the wheels turning in her head as she searched for an excuse, but I wasn't going to let her slip away this time. Do you think I'm stupid, Jenna? I continued, stepping closer. Do you think I didn't notice the late nights, the secrets, the way you've been pulling away? How long has this been going on? Her eyes snapped to mine, sharp and defensive. It hasn't been going on, she spat. Nothing happened, Ethan. I've told you 100 times, and you're still acting like I cheated on you. You haven't given me a single reason to believe you, I shot back. Your words mean nothing right now. Her face twisted with anger, and for a moment, I saw a flash of the woman who used to stand beside me, fierce and unyielding. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. You want the truth? She said, her voice venomous. Fine. I'm bored, Ethan. Bored of your routine, your rules, your need to control every little thing. Jeremy was exciting. He made me feel like I was worth something. Like I wasn't just some piece of furniture you walk past every day without noticing. The words hit me like a sledgehammer. My hands trembled at my sides, and I clenched them into fists to steady myself. "So what?" I said, my voice low. "You decided to throw away everything we built together for a cheap thrill? For some loser who doesn't even have the guts to stick around when things get tough." Her face flushed, but she didn't look away. "You don't get it, Ethan. You're so focused on being the perfect husband that you don't even see me anymore. All you see is what you want me to be." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. "And what do you see, Jenna? A husband who loves you? Who sacrifices for you? Who would have done anything to make you happy?" Silence. Her lips parted, but she had no answer. "That's what I thought," I said, stepping back. "You're not bored, Jenna. You're selfish. You don't care about anyone but yourself, and you sure as hell don't deserve me." Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't care if they were real. I turned and headed for the bedroom, slamming the door behind me. I couldn't stand to look at her for another second. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the party. Every word Jenna had thrown at me like knives. Bored, controlling, suffocating. The anger boiled in my chest, but beneath it was something worse. An ache so deep it felt like it would swallow me whole. When the first rays of sunlight crept through the blinds, I finally got up. Jenna hadn't come to bed. Part of me had expected her to barge in, yelling or crying, trying to salvage whatever was left. But the living room was empty, save for her purse still sitting on the table and the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air. I brewed a pot of coffee, the mechanical motions of pouring water and scooping grounds grounding me. But even the rich, familiar smell couldn't calm the storm inside me. By the time I poured a cup, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to let her rewrite the story of us. If she wanted to paint me as the villain, I'd show her what a villain could really do. By the time Jenna finally walked into the kitchen, I was ready. She was still in the dress from the party, her makeup smudged and her eyes heavy with exhaustion. She looked at me cautiously, as if testing the waters. "Morning," she said softly, her voice raw. I sipped my coffee, saying nothing. "Ethan, I didn't mean for things to go the way they did last night," she started, inching closer. "I was upset, and I said things I didn't mean. Can we please talk?" I set the mug down with a deliberate clink, leaning back in my chair. "Talk? About what? How you're bored with your marriage? Or how you needed some random guy to feel excited again?" She winced but didn't back down. "You're twisting my words again. I was trying to explain how I felt, but you wouldn't listen. You never listen." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "That's rich. You're the one who's been sneaking around and lying, but I'm the one who doesn't listen." "I wasn't sneaking around," she snapped, her voice rising. "I told you, nothing happened with Jeremy. You just what, Jenna?" I interrupted, standing up and towering over her. "Needed someone else to make you feel alive? Needed a little excitement in your life because I wasn't enough?" Her eyes filled with tears, and for a split second, I saw the woman I fell in love with, the one who used to laugh at my dumb jokes and dance with me in the kitchen. But that woman was a memory now, a ghost haunting the wreckage of our marriage. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said, her voice trembling. "You didn't mean to get caught," I corrected, my tone cutting. Her jaw tightened, the tears vanishing as quickly as they'd appeared. "I'm trying to fix this, Ethan. Can't you see that? I'm standing here, owning up to my mistakes, and all you can do is throw them back in my face." "Fix this," I repeated, laughing bitterly. "You don't fix something by breaking it into a million. You don't fix a marriage by running to someone else the moment things get hard." She stared at me, her face a mixture of defiance and desperation. "So what? You're just done? You're giving up?" I leaned closer, lowering my voice to a cold whisper. "You gave up the second you let another man touch you." Her breath hitched, and for the first time, she looked genuinely shaken. "I'm not the one who needs to fix this, Jenna," I continued, stepping back. "You are. And honestly, I don't know if you even can." Her face crumpled, and she turned away, clutching the back of a chair for support. I don't know what to do, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Figure it out, I said, grabbing my keys from the counter. But don't expect me to wait around while you do. I left without looking back. I drove aimlessly for hours, the engine's hum a faint backdrop to the chaos in my mind. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Every word Jenna had said, every excuse she'd made, looped in my head like a bad movie. But then, something shifted. The hurt, the anger, it crystallized into something sharper, more deliberate. Jenna wanted excitement? She wanted to play games? Fine. I'd give her a night she'd never forget. By the time I pulled into the parking lot of a small diner on the edge of town, I had a plan. It wasn't just anger driving me anymore. It was the cold satisfaction of knowing that for once, I'd hold all the cards. Inside, I ordered a coffee and pulled out my phone. My first call was to Chris, the mutual friend who had invited us to the party. Chris was loyal to me, we'd been friends for years. But I knew he had a knack for picking up on things others missed. Ethan, he answered groggily. It's 7 in the morning. What's up? I need you to tell me everything you saw last night, I said, skipping the pleasantries. Chris groaned, clearly annoyed. Everything? Man, I was drunk half the time. Focus? I snapped, my tone sharper than I intended. Did you see Jenna with that guy? Jeremy? There was a pause and then Chris sighed. Yeah, I saw them. They were talking in the corner a lot. Seemed close. Too close. And you didn't think to tell me? I didn't want to stir the pot, he said defensively. Look, Jenna's always been flirty. I figured it was harmless. Harmless, I said bitterly. She practically had her hands all over him. Wait, what? Chris's tone shifted, the grogginess replaced with alarm. Are you serious? Dead serious, I said, my voice cold. And now I need your help. What do you need? I hesitated, then leaned forward, lowering my voice as if someone in the empty diner might overhear. Can you find out where this Jeremy guy works? I want to know everything about him. Where he lives, what he does, who he is. Chris let out a low whistle. You're not messing around, are you? No, I said flatly. I'm not. After I hung up, I sat back in the booth, sipping my coffee and staring out the window. The plan was forming, piece by piece, and with each new detail, the anger inside me burned a little less. In its place was something colder, more focused. When I got back home, Jenna was sitting on the couch, her arms wrapped around her knees. She looked up when I walked in, her eyes red and puffy. Ethan, she started, her voice hoarse. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but I want to fix this. Please, just tell me what I need to do. I stood in the doorway, my face unreadable. You want to fix this? I said slowly. Yes, she said, nodding emphatically. Then start by being honest, I said, my voice cutting. How long have you known Jeremy? She flinched, her eyes darting away. A few months, she admitted quietly. And how did you meet him? At work, she said, barely above a whisper. My jaw clenched. You told me you barely talked to anyone at work, that you hated it there. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. I wasn't lying about that, but Jeremy was easy to talk to. He listened to me. I scoffed, shaking my head. He listened? Is that what this is about? Someone giving you attention? It wasn't like that, she protested. I mean, maybe it started that way, but nothing happened, Ethan. I swear. You keep saying that, I said, my voice low. But you're still lying to me. Her face crumpled, and she buried her head in her hands. I don't know how to fix this, she sobbed. I watched her for a long moment, the woman who had been my partner, my confidant, reduced to a shadow of the person I thought I knew. And as I stood there, the final piece of my plan clicked into place. I'll tell you how to fix it, I said, my voice calm and steady. You'll see soon enough. I turned and walked out of the room, leaving her sobs echoing behind me. The wheels were in motion now. By the end of the night, Jenna would learn exactly what it felt like to be on the receiving end of betrayal. The rest of the day was a blur of calculated moves. I wasn't acting out of impulse anymore, this was strategy. Jenna thought she could play me, twist the narrative to make herself the victim. But what she didn't realize was that I wasn't a pawn in her game. I was the one flipping the board. Chris came through faster than I expected. By mid-afternoon, I had everything I needed on Jeremy: his full name, job, social media profiles, even the gym he frequented. I stared at his smiling photos for a long time, rage simmering beneath my skin. This guy thought he could snake his way into my marriage, charm his way into my wife's attention. He needed to learn there were consequences for stepping into someone else's territory. But first, Jenna needed to see the truth. By early evening, I put my plan into motion. Jenna had spent most of the day sulking in the bedroom, emerging only once to grab a glass of water. She didn't say a word to me, and that was fine. Silence worked in my favor. Around 6 p.m., I knocked on the bedroom door and opened it without waiting for a response. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, scrolling through her phone, her eyes puffy and tired. "Get dressed," I said flatly. She looked up, confused. "Why?" "We're going out," I said, leaning against the doorframe. Her brow furrowed. "Out? After everything that's happened?" "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "You wanted to fix this, right? This is part of it." She hesitated, studying my face for any sign of ulterior motives. She wouldn't find one, not yet. "Okay," she said cautiously. "Where are we going?" "You'll see." By the time we left the house, the sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery shades of orange and red. Jenna was unusually quiet in the car, stealing glances at me as if trying to decipher my intentions. I didn't speak until we pulled into the parking lot of a sleek bar downtown. The kind of place she used to love when we were younger, before marriage and responsibilities settled into routine. "Why here?" she asked, her voice uncertain. "You'll see," I said again, a small smile tugging at my lips. Inside, the place was alive with music and chatter, the kind of energy that reminded you of summer nights and carefree days. I led Jenna to a table near the back, where we had a clear view of the bar and the entrance. "Sit," I said, gesturing to the chair across from me. She obeyed, her wariness growing. "Ethan, what is this?" I leaned back, feigning casual indifference. "Just relax. Enjoy the night." And then, right on cue, Jeremy walked in. I saw the shift in Jenna immediately, the way her eyes widened, the way she quickly looked down at her lap as if that would somehow make her invisible. Jeremy didn't notice us at first, his attention fixed on his phone as he made his way to the bar. "Small world," I said, my voice dripping with mock surprise. "Isn't that your friend Jeremy?" Jenna's head snapped up, her face pale. "Ethan, I held up a hand, cutting her off. "Don't say a word." Before she could argue, I stood up and walked over to the bar, my heart pounding but my expression calm. Jeremy looked up as I approached, his face lighting up with recognition before quickly morphing into discomfort. "Jeremy," I said, smiling tightly. "Fancy seeing you here." Hey," he said, shifting awkwardly. "Didn't expect to run into you." "Yeah, funny how that works," I said, leaning casually against the bar. "So, tell me, how's work? Or, sneaking around with married women?" His face flushed red, and he glanced around like a cornered animal. "Look, man, I don't know what she told you, but..." I leaned in closer, my voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "She told me enough. Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to turn around, walk out of this bar, and stay the hell away from my wife. Do you understand me?" He swallowed hard, nodding quickly. Yeah, I get it. Good." I straightened up, giving him one last glare before turning and walking back to the table. Jenna was sitting stiffly, her hands clenched together on the table. "What did you say to him?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Don't worry about it," I said, sitting down. "What you should be worried about is how we got to this point in the first place." She didn't respond, her gaze fixed on the table. "This is what your choices have done," I said, my voice cold. "I hope it was worth it, Jenna. I really do." The night wasn't over yet. I wasn't done. But for the first time in days, I felt a flicker of control. Jenna barely spoke during the ride home. Her hands fidgeted in her lap, her eyes glued to the blur of city lights outside the window. I could feel her unease radiating off her, a mix of fear and anger she was struggling to suppress. Good. By the time we pulled into the driveway, The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Jenna lingered by the car as I unlocked the front door, her hesitation so obvious it was almost laughable. "Are you coming in? Or do you need a minute to think about how to spin this?" I said, my tone icy. She glared at me, the spark of defiance returning to her eyes. "You've made your point, Ethan. Enough with the dramatics." I didn't respond. Instead, I stepped inside and walked to the living room, leaving the door open behind me. She followed reluctantly, her heels clicking against the floor like a metronome counting down to the inevitable. When she stepped inside, I was already seated on the couch, my phone in hand. I gestured for her to sit. "We're not doing this right now," she said, folding her arms. "Oh, we absolutely are," I countered, locking eyes with her. "Because I'm done with the lies, Jenna. It's time for the truth." Her jaw tightened, but she sat down, her posture rigid. "You want the truth?" she said, her voice sharp. "Fine. Yes, I've been talking to Jeremy. Yes, I've been unhappy. But I didn't sleep with him, Ethan. You've built this whole narrative in your head, and it's not real." I stared at her, unflinching. "Do you honestly think I believe that? After everything I've seen, everything I've heard?" "It's the truth," she insisted, her voice rising. "I was lonely, and he was there. That's all it was." I leaned forward, my voice dangerously calm. "Do you even hear yourself? You were lonely, so you ran to another man instead of coming to me. How does that make any sense?" Her gaze faltered, but she quickly regained her composure. "You're not exactly easy to talk to, Ethan. You shut me out. You're so focused on being right all the time that you don't even see me anymore." "Don't turn this around on me," I said, my voice cold. "This isn't about me not seeing you. It's about you making choices that could destroy everything we've built." "Maybe it's already destroyed," she snapped, her words cutting like glass. The silence that followed was deafening. Her words hung in the air, a dagger she couldn't take back. "You've made your choice," I said finally, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "But you're not the only one who gets to decide how this ends." Her eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my phone and tapped the screen a few times before setting it on the coffee table between us. She leaned forward, her brow furrowing as she saw the open text conversation with Chris. "What is this?" she asked, her voice uneasy. "Proof," I said simply, "of everything you've done, of everything you've lied about." Chris was more observant than you realized, and he had no problem filling in the blanks. Her face paled as she scrolled through the messages. Chris had laid it all out. How he'd seen Jenna and Jeremy slipping off together at work events. How their so-called friendship had been the talk of the office for weeks. "This is..." she trailed off, her voice trembling. "It's the truth," I said, leaning back. "Something you clearly have no concept of anymore." She dropped the phone, her hands shaking. "Ethan, don't..." I interrupted, my voice sharp. "Don't even try to explain. I gave you every opportunity to come clean, and you chose to keep lying." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I felt nothing. No pity, no compassion. Just cold, unrelenting resolve. "I want you out of this house," I said, my tone final. Her head snapped up, her expression a mix of shock and disbelief. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm dead serious," I said, standing up. "You wanted freedom, excitement, a fresh start? Here's your chance. Pack your things and go." She stood, her tears now flowing freely. "Ethan, please." "It's over, Jenna," I said, cutting her off. "You made sure of that." I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, broken and silent. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. I didn't look back as I walked upstairs, each step feeling like a barrier between me and the chaos Jenna had unleashed on our lives. I shut the bedroom door behind me, locking it for good measure. The muffled sounds of her crying downstairs didn't stir any sympathy in me. This wasn't a sudden fall. It was a crash I'd seen coming from the first crack. Now I was finally stepping out of the wreckage. I spent the next few hours packing up her things. Drawers, closets, shelves, anything that carried a piece of her, I boxed up methodically. The same hands that once built our home together now worked to erase her from it. By the time I was done, the bedroom felt colder, emptier, but somehow lighter. When I walked downstairs, she was sitting on the couch, her face pale and tear-streaked. She looked up at me, hope flickering in her eyes like a dying ember. "You didn't mean it," she whispered, "about wanting me to leave. You were angry. We can fix this, Ethan. We have to." I set the first box on the floor beside her, the sound heavy and deliberate. "No, Jenna, you have to fix yourself. But you're not going to do it here." Her lips quivered, and she shook her head. "This isn't fair. I made a mistake, but I didn't break our vows. You're throwing everything away over nothing." "Nothing?" I echoed, my voice rising. "Do you even hear yourself? You betrayed me, maybe not physically, but emotionally. That's worse. You let another man into a space that was supposed to be sacred between us. And now you want to call it nothing?" She stood abruptly, her hands balled into fists at her sides. "Fine. You want me gone. I'll leave. But don't pretend you're some perfect victim in all this, Ethan. You've been impossible to live with. Cold. Distant. Do you know how lonely it's been, trying to reach you while you just exist like a statue?" I stared at her, the irony of her words almost laughable. "Lonely?" I said, shaking my head. "You didn't feel lonely when you were sneaking around with Jeremy. You didn't feel lonely when you were bad-mouthing me to him. You only feel lonely now because you're facing the consequences of your actions." She opened her mouth to argue but stopped, her eyes narrowing. "You think you're so righteous," she spat, "like you've never made a mistake in your life." "I've made plenty of mistakes," I said, my tone cutting. "But trusting you? That's the one I'll never make again." For a moment, we stood there in silence, the air between us thick with tension and finality. She looked away first, grabbing her purse and keys from the table. "I'll come back for the rest of my things later," she muttered, her voice hollow. "No," I said firmly. "You'll take them now. Everything is packed. Call whoever you need to help, but you're not walking back into this house again." Her shoulders sagged, and for the first time, she looked defeated. Without another word, she walked outside, leaving the door open behind her. I stood in the doorway, watching as she sat in her car for a long moment before driving off into the night. The faint red glow of her taillights disappeared down the street, and with it, the weight of her presence finally lifted from my chest. Inside, the house was eerily quiet. I sat down on the couch, staring at the boxes that now represented the end of 7 years of my life. It felt surreal, like a chapter one hadn't realized was ending until the words were already written. But I wasn't sad, not anymore. I was free, and for the first time in a long time, I could see the possibility of starting over. A clean slate, without the shadows of betrayal haunting every corner. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and raised it to the empty room. "Here's to moving forward," I muttered. The first sip burned, but it was a good burn. One that reminded me I was alive. The day after Jenna left felt like stepping into a new world. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that used to feel suffocating but now felt peaceful. It was mine again. Every corner, every creak in the floorboards, every faded photo on the wall. The first thing I did was open all the windows, letting the crisp morning air sweep through the rooms. It felt symbolic, like I was purging the ghosts of what had been and making space for what could be. I spent the morning unpacking the emotional mess she'd left behind. Her boxes were gone, but the memories lingered, clinging to the edges of my mind like cobwebs. I didn't want them there anymore. I started with the photos. Every picture of us smiling, arms around each other, the life we pretended was perfect. I took them down one by one. Some I tossed in the trash, others I stuffed into a box marked for the attic. Maybe one day I'd look at them again, but not today. Then came the small things, her favorite mug in the cabinet, the throw blanket she insisted on draping over the couch, the half-empty bottle of her overpriced shampoo in the bathroom. I gathered it all, erasing her presence from the home like a final act of defiance. By afternoon, the house felt different, lighter, freer. I stood in the living room, surveying my work, and for the first time in weeks, I smiled. But I wasn't done. I picked up my phone and dialed Chris. "Ethan," he answered after a few rings. "How you holding up, man?" "I'm good," I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. "I just wanted to say thanks for everything." You didn't have to get involved. But you did. And I owe you. Don't mention it, he said. You'd have done the same for me. Yeah, I would. I agreed. By the way, I'm going to need one more favor. Name it. Help me put together a guy's night. Something low-key. Just a chance to relax and get my head straight. Chris laughed. Now you're talking. Leave it to me. After hanging up, I sat back and let out a long breath. It felt good to take control again, to make decisions for myself instead of reacting to someone else's chaos. The evening passed quietly. I cooked dinner, a real meal, not the frozen pizza or takeout I'd been surviving on for weeks. I ate at the dining table, not on the couch, and I didn't once reach for my phone to scroll mindlessly. When the sun dipped below the horizon, I poured myself another drink and sat on the back porch. The night was calm. The stars scattered across the sky like tiny beacons of hope. Jenna's betrayal had shattered something in me, but as I sat there, I realized it hadn't destroyed me. If anything, it had forced me to see what I'd been blind to for years, that I deserved more. More honesty, more respect, more love. I raised my glass to the stars. To second chances, I said softly, and to never settling again. As I took a sip, I felt a sense of closure settling over me. The past was a scar, but scars heal. They remind you of where you've been, but they don't have to define where you're going. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to move forward.